You are tuned in to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. Join us now on another exciting metaphysical journey. Relax, tune in, drop out, and take a seat by the fire as we explore new realms and possibilities. This is Magenta Pixie. You can find me at magentapixie.weebly.com. But now, here is Zany Mystic and guest. Enjoy the show.
Greetings, and welcome to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. I'm your host, Lance White. My guest tonight is a dear friend who I've spent many hours conversing with. She embodies the divine feminine, the elementals, divas and nature spirits, and sources from higher dimensional ET races. Being a sensitive empath with numerous metaphysical gifts, her journey is one of breaking through the illusory belief systems often called the Matrix. Following divine wisdom within, she creates alchemical shifts by aligning with and creating divine archetypes such as beauty, truth, wisdom, grace, and the goddess energies. It is with great pleasure that I welcome her to the show now. Hello, dear lady. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Well, we're referring to you as the Lady of the Woods, which is your name. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on tonight to share your unique perspective with us.
Okay, you're welcome.
Well, you shared a story with me today that I thought was really valuable. I got quite a bit out of it, and it kind of ties into what's been going on with you with various energy attacks and shifts that have been going on in your life. Would you like to start there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's the importance of this story is probably the fact that we, as human beings here in 3D, are still able to manifest and effect changes that are seemingly impossible. Okay? Mm. So this story is probably a testament to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Wow, where do I begin? Okay, so I live by an airport, and it's probably maybe 5 blocks away, and I've been living here for 10 years, and there's never been a problem. But this year, all of a sudden, the noise of the planes flying overhead started to increase and be more numerous, and it started to really drive me crazy. It turns out that on many days, the planes would be flying every 1 to 3 minutes overhead at 400-foot altitude, and they sound like little Harley-Davidsons flying overhead. And every 1 to 3 minutes can be maddening from 7:30 in the morning till 7 at night, right? And it turns out that this is the 9th busiest airport in the entire country.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of traffic.
That is a lot.
Yeah, that's why it turned out. So, yes, they did open another runway last year, which is why it got busy, but they told me nothing changed. Anyway, I started to get really, really sick, and the noise was excruciating. And at first it just bothered me in my head, but then it started to get to me physically in my abdomen, and I started to feel like my life force was draining. And I'm just abbreviating a lot here. So
right.
This has been going on since January, and it started to get progressively worse. And there was no place I could go. I had to stay here because eventually I'd have to come back anyway. So this was a situation, that was here, and either I learned to live with it in peace or I move. And I didn't want to move because I have a good situation here. So I started to get really, really sick and have panic attacks, and I still get hyperventilation sometimes from this, but I said, something's got to happen. So I went through all the channels that they tell you. You call the noise control guy, you make phone calls, you make requests, and you do this, that, and the next thing. I went to a meeting. They called me to a meeting. We talked about it, and nothing happened. And every time I called the control guy, he said, there's nothing they can do. And I said, no, this is not possible. I was a student pilot myself, and I know that the pilot can choose, how large or small a circle, patterns, whatever. The details really don't matter. But we really got into it, and this has been going on for a couple of months. Now, they still didn't want to do anything, and I didn't want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
So last week I called. I finally got the number for the control tower itself. And this guy, let's just call him Ron. Okay.
Okay.
And so Ron, at the control tower, blew me off. He just said, there's nothing I can do. You have to take this to the aviation department. And I'm like, well, no, Ron, I know we can do something. And he's like, no, we can't. You call somebody else. So he blew me off. So that was not nice. He was also at the meeting, and he was trying to tell me silly things, and he lied about a few things. So I said, this is not good, right? And the noise control guy also was telling me there's nothing that can be done, right? So I was getting nowhere with conventional methods. And I said, okay, I'm going to have to handle this another way. I really have to tap into my divine abilities. I mean, if human beings are what they say we are, we have abilities. And I've done this before in different ways, but I knew I had to do something now, and it was really difficult because I was feeling so completely sick and so, drained, and it was hard to conjure up my energy, but I guess I did it anyway. So after speaking with him last week and he blew me off, I said, no. I said, something has got to be done. So one of the things that I do when I really need to figure out how to handle something is I work in nature. I work with the soil, and I do gardening and things like that. So, excuse me. So I decided to do some gardening 2 days ago and, spend the whole day doing this. And while I was gardening, I was having this conversation in my head, mostly in a lucid state. It wasn't intentional. It was mostly like lucid. I wasn't doing this on purpose, but it just happened in the background. And I had a conversation with Ron, and I basically told him that he was irresponsible, he was negligent, he blew me off, he was disrespectful, he lied, and he was not qualified to be a manager of a control tower, guiding pilots, if he was not telling them what was going on, and that he was willing to risk my sanity, literally my sanity, just to appease, his sense of, arrogance or whatever it was, because he totally just didn't want to be bothered. And I'm having this conversation, and I said, because you're not qualified and you're disrespectful, you need to be fired. I said, and furthermore, the airport needs to go, because this area has gone from being a village to a city, and it's very crowded now. And as soon as these planes take off, they're flying over homes, over people's and houses and people's property. It's not sparse. It's really packed. So I said the airport has got to go as well. And I'm having this conversation, and I finished my gardening. And my neighbor calls me on the phone, and she tells me, there's a meeting tonight at the town hall, and it has to do with the airport. And she didn't know what it was about, and she just saw that really quickly. It was 7 o'clock, and I said, oh, my God, I have to go, because maybe they're still trying to make it a small jet airport. Again, because they were trying to bring jets into the airport before, and it didn't work. And I was, oh, my God, they can't do that. I'll go crazy, so I have to show up. So I went to the airport, and I sat down, and everybody was very upset. And within 5 minutes, I discovered that this guy, Ron, was fired, and that they're closing down the control tower. They're closing it down. Now, I sat there not believing my ears. I said, wait a minute. I have felt this before, this magnificent feeling of manifestation before, but it has been a long, long time. But I sat there and I listened, and definitely it was confirmed that it was closed, and the airport would be closing, the control tower would be closing on April 7th, and 2 of the runways would be closed down. And one of them is the one that flies over my house. Because
Incredible.
they do circles over my house, around and around all day long.
Wow.
So when I heard this, I sat there, and I had to be the only one smiling. And, all these other people were like, no, they can't close it. It's a historical landmark and all of this. And I'm saying to myself, yes, it's a historical landmark, but it was, put there, by the Navy for, to train pilots for the war. We don't need that anymore either. We don't need war anymore either. We don't need, fighter pilots anymore. This also has to end. It has to become a park for people, for everybody, that is friendly, a sanctuary for the neighborhood, and it has to become something beautiful and not just catering to a handful of pilots.
Absolutely.
Well, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'm working on that one.
Well, this is a really beautiful example of the power of manifestation when we stand in our own sovereignty, and that we are not powerless, and that many of the things that we hold as being way beyond our ability to control because they are doing this, and the military and the politics and the rest of it, that's exactly what we are being led to believe, so that we disempower ourselves.
Exactly.
But if one person can take their own power and do this, then all of us together, can you imagine what we would be able to do with halting wars, chemtrails, GMO food, the atomic nuclear power, the ridiculous addiction to gasoline, which is outmoded, and we've been kept on outmoded forms of energy for 100 years now. And we all know that the solutions to most of the problems, if not all of them, already exist. They're just held by those who are in control that keep this a matrix-like prison. And that is what needs to really change. And if you can change your mindset, and this kind of thing can be accomplished, then everyone can do it. There's no reason why not.
That's right. That's right. And in 2009, I also started working on, dare I say it?
Yes, go ahead. Let it out.
Okay, I started working on taking down the Vatican. Because that is an absolutely diabolical institution, and it has to come down. I stood there. I was there, and I felt it. And it was just absolutely the darkest pit you can imagine. And all of those men who, how did you say it before? You said who wear these particular kinds of robes and speak in Latin tones and words and things like that. I think you said something like that. I think that's what you were referring to. That was so funny.
Right.
Yeah, no. So, the secret, not the secret, I shouldn't say the secret. The key to what I do is that I don't doubt myself. That's the key, because what so many people will say is, oh, my God, you can't, what are you going to do? You can't do anything, right? How many times do we hear people saying things like that? What are we going to, oh, they're not going to listen, and they don't, right? We know they don't, right?
That's right.
So that's why you have to go to a higher source, and that higher source is inside of you. And that higher source only works when you absolutely know that it does. See, I don't think of myself as just a single person who can't do anything. I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as a being of God, and when I speak in righteousness as a being of God, then it has to happen. Period. End of story.
And that requires some of the energy of Kali as well, doesn't it?
Well, yes, a little bit.
A little bit, yes. Well, the warrior priestess and princess has to come out. The divine goddess has to be able to manifest. And we need to know that we are coming from the highest place within for the good of all.
Right. This is yes, because it's like the Divine Mother who gets upset because what is happening to me was only the microcosm of a macrocosmic situation, right? So here I am getting panic attacks from noise, but do you think I'm the only one in this neighborhood who is being bothered by these planes flying all day long? No, not possible. There have to be, little old ladies or little old men, or children or sensitive people. I know the dogs don't like them. I know the birds hate it. They don't sing when this is going on, and I had a story about that. I'll tell you another time. They literally told me that they were suffering from the planes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I didn't realize that they were not singing. They don't sing. The birds don't sing when the planes are flying. They wait until the planes stop. When I started to pay attention to it, I said, oh, my God, it's true what they said. I didn't realize it until they told me.
I feel the same thing here.
Yeah, so I'm not the only one who's suffering from this. And I know that this neighborhood can be a good neighborhood if you don't give up on it and allow these, a handful of, of guys to just, fly overhead everybody's homes and like there's a crash every other month, And no, we don't need this, I had my tolerance, and I do know the difference between right and wrong. I do know that this is torture and it's noise. We don't need more noise. We need less. We need peace and quiet.
Oh, absolutely. And to take back the planet, or to take it to another level, or however you want to express it, whether it be ascension or inscension or higher dimensional realities, however that manifests, we have to have a vision of some kind of divine elements of beauty and peace and truth and love and compassion, and the emotions have to be involved.
Right.
We've talked a little bit about the emotions and how important they are as guideposts and signposts for recognizing when something is wrong.
Exactly. That's why they're there. And you have them because those emotions are there for corrective action. And that's exactly what I did. I was not going to be defeated. What am I going to do? Let them drive me insane? I'm going insane for a reason. This is an abuse. It's harassment. It's horrible. And why should I allow that? I shouldn't have to allow. No, I'm sorry. So that's the other thing. So you have to have, the key is you have to believe that you are this person of power, and that, and the other key is that you have the authority to make that decision.
Yes.
So I call it making an executive decision.
I love it.
All right.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah, I made the executive decision that this man had to go. He was not qualified to do what he was doing because of all the reasons that I said. He disrespected me, he lied, he blew me off, he was arrogant, and he had to go.
Right.
Period. No question.
And
he was not qualified.
Within a day, he was fired, right?
I found out that night he was fired. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, and that the airport tower is closing. Now, this had been in process, but still, the universe, it's funny because, it manipulates space and time. We don't, what are the chances of this happening when I had this conversation standing in my absolute power? What are the chances?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Tell me, yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about when you were a little girl growing up and some of the things that absolutely shocked and horrified you. Wasn't there a moment when you found out there were still wars?
Yeah.
Would you like to share that story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think I was 10 years old, and I was in my mother's room. She had the television on, and she always monitored what we watched, and so we always had special little hours where we could watch TV, and that was it. But in this case, she had left her TV on, and I passed by the TV, and I saw a commercial. And the commercial was showing Africa and the wars that were taking place there, and they were showing all of the children that were starving, these, skinny little babies, and they were crying and starving with distended abdomens. Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh my God, I don't know how people get over things. Some things I just don't get over. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I just went into hysterical crying. And it was just beyond me that this was happening. Like, and they were showing these men with weapons,
mm-hmm.
right? And
mm-hmm.
and armor, and they were angry and brutal and violent and just killing people, their own people. Mm. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I went hysterical. And my mom came in, and she's, "What's wrong? What's going on? What's happening?" And I said, I was looking at the TV, and I asked her, I said, "Mom, is this true? Is this real?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, that's what's happening." And I got it out. I don't know how I got it out because I was crying so hard and choking on my tears. But I said, "Why? Why are they doing this?" And she just looked at me with a funny look, and she frowned her face, And she said, "Because that's just the way they are."
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just blew me away. That made no sense whatsoever. That was a totally incomplete answer, and I vowed in that moment that I would find out why these men are killing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And killing their own people and causing their own children to starve.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I was
mm-hmm.
10 years old. And I have been studying this for 40 years. Right?
Right.
And I have found an answer.
Okay.
There's only one answer, but the answer is absolute sheer insanity. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. There is no reason why you pick up a gun to kill a complete stranger and allow your children to starve, except for insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was horrible. I never get used to these things. They always affect me when I see them.
And it seems that any rational being that is truly in touch with their feelings, especially the feminine aspect, or the divine feminine, or the female in particular, because it seems that the feminine side is connected to the intuitive brain, the right half, which is compassionate and loving, and most men are disconnected from that, and they live from the left brain, which is the analytical, calculating mind that tends to be more linear. So it seems that it's important to connect with that feminine side, and that many people are working towards liberating the female in society, because we're all enslaved, but the patriarchy has existed for thousands of years now, and we can see where that has taken us. Mm-hmm. That there are now forces that have become so strong that they have become almost unstoppable in their, not completely unstoppable, but almost unstoppable in their desire to control and manipulate and create fear, destruction, chaos, and overwrite all that is organic.
Right, and that's intentional, and it's not a plan. They've succeeded. They've done it.
Right. Right.
It's there. It's already been done. And what I say that they are rabid by now.
Mm-hmm.
They've absolutely gone rabid.
Mm-hmm.
Because they will never volunteer to let it go. They would rather self-destruct than let it go, because they don't know anything else. They're not functioning from a coherent space anymore. It's absolute pure psychopathy.
Yes.
It's gone. They're gone.
Yes, absolutely. And don't you feel that part of the control system that we call, let's say people do refer to it as the Illuminati, sources from the top of the pyramid, the top of the negative part of the pyramid, which is the Vatican?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, and it goes further than that too. I mean,
let's go as far as we can take it.
Okay. Off-world. Let's just start out there.
Okay.
Because that's where I believe it is born. Because I don't believe that the original human being, was born with these sicknesses. I think these sicknesses were given to the human being, especially the man, because they understood that the man could control everything for them because the man had this physical strength. And so they used him to be the violent aggressor, to keep everything in the position that they want. So they use men, but men are very willingly going to do these things, right? You know, it's not like you have to twist and break their arm. I mean, you just offer them a little something, you know, here's a little, you know, a beer, you know, go kill that guy, you know.
Right.
And they'll go.
Right.
You know?
Right. We're easy. Too easy.
Yeah, you know, a little carrot and they're off. And so it's a really horrible situation. But it's run and it is organized, highly organized, by, you know, the archontic types. And these ones come from off planet, and they've been using human men, especially, for their weakness, to do all these things, to live through them on this planet.
Yes, absolutely. Many people talk about this now. One of the people that I've had on my show regularly that seems to have a very good handle on the control paradigm is George Kavasilis, and he's one of the people that I pay attention to, and of course John Lamb Lash has written about this, and he has some theories about it. But then this goes back to the Gnostic vision and the awareness of the Archons, which can take many shapes and forms, from the minuscule or the nanoparticle to extremely large creations. And, you know...
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. So you see them as that small to that big?
Yes. Yes, and that covers the as above and so below. So that also includes, because we're operating multidimensionally, so we're in multiple realities simultaneously, and most people can't hold their awareness except for whatever they're looking at in the moment. And so the real war is on for what we focus on, to get us to focus on the trivial, what is artificial, and to dumb us down. So that's occurring chemically and through chemtrails, GMO food, fluoride in the water, and then they're introducing genetics, microbiology, and nanotechnology through the form of self-replicating nanotechnology, which creates diseases like Morgellons. And people suffer from these diseases, which are self-replicating organisms that are basically not biological.
No, right. And so this is another point where in our previous discussion earlier today, I would ask the question, how did people manifest this themselves with the law of attraction if they are given substances that they don't even know existed?
That is the question. You know, did we consent to this? Are we consenting just by the very nature that we're here and being given these things that we don't know about? I tend to think that we are not responsible for being in an enslaved matrix in which those who hold most of the control strings are attempting to further control and expand out into other galaxies.
Yeah.
But what can you do when most of humanity is asleep and not aware of what's going on? Getting back to the Vatican and their control, it's pretty clear that they have information and hard facts stowed away in probably miles and miles of caverns about the ET presence.
Oh, that's not even a question. That's for sure.
Right. And we know the horrors that they've created through... Yeah,
the Inquisition. If anybody is unsure about what they do, just look into the Jesuits and what they do. The military, yes, they are a military with weapons, And the Inquisition is still very much alive. They call it something else, but the Inquisition is still there. And this man, Bertoli, the Italian guy that some people suspected was going to be up for Pope now, was the Pope's right-hand man. He is the head of the Inquisition at this point.
And then there's supposed to be a satanic aspect to the church as well.
Absolutely. I was there, and I felt it. I didn't know this when I was there at the Vatican, and I was with my my boyfriend at the time, Swiss guy, and he took me there for my birthday. He took me to Italy, very nice,
Wow.
Going to all of these places, and come on, let's go to the Vatican, let's go see where the Pope lives, I'm like, oh, okay. I was trying to get excited, but I wasn't sure why I wasn't, because at that time I didn't know these things, right? But when we got there and we climbed all those stairs, there's a popular tourist thing that takes you up some stairs, and I stood there. I'm trying to feel the holiness of this place, right? I'm trying to feel reverent, and I'm forcing it, and all I could feel was complete sickness in the pit of my stomach and a sense of black creepiness around me, and I could not wait to get out. And I'm looking at all of the people from this point, this vantage point up here where you look down at the plaza. And I'm like, how do these people not see this? How do they not feel this? How do they not know what's going on here? Why are they walking around like nothing's happening? This place is diabolical, And I had to keep this to myself because nobody else could feel and see what I was feeling and seeing. But I saw that satanic element there.
And, in fact, it was you that brought my attention to Kevin Annett, who is an absolutely amazing person who is exposing the crimes of the church.
Now that is a holy man, okay?
Yes.
That is what I call a holy man.
Yes.
What he's
I
doing.
had him on the show, and he is just phenomenal. I had never known about the murder of the indigenous tribes in Canada. We know that it occurred here in the United States, and we know that that's an attempt to completely snuff out the organic and natural divine elements, the spiritual elements that help us to empower the planet and to live in harmony. And the horrors that I heard about through Kevin were really eye-opening. And he is the one that has gone after the Vatican and served them with papers, and has also served the royal family, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of the Netherlands, who just stepped down. And then I subsequently found out from a friend of mine who lives in the UK. He sent me 2 links to radio shows that were completely about the pedophile rings that are in the Netherlands. And it's staggering. It is absolutely mind-blowing. It's sickening to know that this is occurring at the very highest levels.
Right.
And that children and babies are being taken and groomed for sex rings and ritual sacrifice, and that politicians are being coerced and filmed and blackmailed, and that this is systemic. And what you see on the outside in the Netherlands are all these wonderful people, la-di-da, look at the flowers, and there's an underbelly of darkness and evil that is absolutely beyond belief. And I think that that's why people are having so much difficulty even beginning to wrap their heads around this stuff, because it is all pervasive. It is the bedrock upon which society is founded, and everyone is putting a happy face on it.
Yeah.
It's
a form of denial that is also psychopathic, because I understand that it's difficult to look at. It was difficult for me to look at it. It's still difficult for me to look at it, but I can't deny what exists, right? I'm not going to say it doesn't exist if it's everywhere. I mean, you have to get real at some point, but There are, far too many people don't want to look at it because it ruins your life. You can't be the same person again when you know what's happening with children.
Yes.
At the same time, because they're doing that, they become slightly complicit in what's happening because the greatest evil is for good men to do nothing.
Oh,
right?
My, yes. Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
This
right.
is how evil succeeds, is when good men do nothing, because evil
yes.
is not going to stop itself.
Yes.
And this planet is just seething and screaming, in agony herself because of what's happening at the root and the secrecy, because on the psychological level, everybody is feeling this at some point. Everybody is feeling the sickness, whether they recognize it or not.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
It's a toxic, completely toxic spiritual environment all over the entire planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it has brought me a great deal of pain to contemplate how these things, it doesn't matter how they came about, whether it was here 450,000 years ago from the Anunnaki or whether it was some kind of, demigod that came in and pretended to be the God. And
there were a lot of those.
And there are a lot of those, Yahweh
mm-hmm.
and Jehovah and the rest of it. So that's where these judgmental gods that tell people to kill and to get even come from. And there's even mention of a holographic reality, which Barbara Marciniak has talked about, which has been projected into the various races to keep us separate and to cause us to fall prey to the control of the of the matrix, the higher matrix.
And part of that is also erasing the memory of our human history. Right?
Yes.
Erasing the entire memory of. We don't know as a species. We don't know who we are or where we came from. Where everybody's still asking. Why is that? We should not be asking. Do you know who knew? Do you know who knew? The indigenous people.
Oh, yes. Yes.
The indigenous people know where they came from. They know who God is. They know where God is, and they have strength in their togetherness, right? And this is why they were systematically wiped out by these archontic inquisitions and Jesuits and mercenaries and everybody who came in, all of these men who decided to come in and take over, right?
Absolutely.
Wipe out the indigenous people.
That's right.
But these are the aliens. These are the aliens.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And this kind of thing is going on today. And, if we become any more disconnected than we are, there will be no going back.
There will be a separation of soul from God, exactly.
Yeah.
And we will be separated, and we will just become biologies, right? We would just be biology, no soul, just biology.
Right.
And when that expires, that's it. It's the end.
Exactly.
And people really have to wake up. They really do.
We've also talked about the incarnational process having been co-opted. That there is the very real possibility that the incarnational process is not an organic process. That souls are being recycled by the very controllers who run this.
I believe that.
Yes, and that look at near-death experiences. How people are taken to the other side, and then they're shown. Well, if you can come cross over and be in the light, but just look at what you can do if you go back. And there's a generic program for recycling souls that keeps them stuck in lessons and recurring cycles that they cannot break out of, and they're just literally recycled the second they die.
Right. And so they're recycled, and they come back over and over to come back to learn a quote-unquote lesson that they're not told what it is, because how many lessons are there to learn? I mean, my God, if you think about it, emotionally, spiritually, physically, how many thousands upon thousands of lessons? But you're not told which lesson it is that you're supposed to be learning in this lifetime, and you have to come back. Your memory is wiped. You don't know who you are, what you did before, what you learned before. right?
That's right.
And you have complete amnesia, and you're wiped until you're absolutely a dimwit, but you're supposed to come back and learn a lesson under extreme duress and stress, and being bombarded with chemtrail, fluoride, GMOs, probably abuse in the family, right?
Yeah.
ELS, HARP. I mean, okay, I can go on and on and on with all of these abuses, right?
Yep.
And we're supposed to be learning lessons under all of these conditions, right?
Right.
Okay, well.
And then, it just makes sense that the most destructive souls, the psychopaths, would be chosen for particular male roles to raise them up and to choose those particular people to become CEOs of corporations, Wall Street executives, political leaders, and so on, because they can be completely controlled, and they have no empathy and no feeling. They have an ability to act. That is the secret. That there are people among us who can act like they're us and can act like they have feelings, but they do not have them.
And this is mind-boggling. This has been another. I mean, I don't know how I'm still here, because I have gotten so sick with nausea in my gut to find out, what is going on this planet, what are psychopaths, who are these psychopaths? And I had one in my life, right? So I have firsthand experience with this one, and I never knew he was a psychopath, right? He nearly destroyed me. I almost, that means a person who has been affected by a psychopath, they will tell you it's a common profile, that the victim of the psychopath has been so severely traumatized that it takes them really a long time to get over their experience, whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
But the psychopath moves on from day one with no remorse, no nothing whatsoever. No. And this was the case of, myself and my ex after 20 years. So, yeah, and we're walking, I mean, there is an extensive population of these walking around, and we don't know who they are. And they are our families, our mates, and our partners. And we need to understand that they exist, as well as what they call organic portals, right? Yes. That's another, I'm not entirely sure what the differences are, but these things are real. These things are real. It's shocking.
And it further confuses the issue in some ways. Actually, it adds clarity to contemplate the idea that there are those on the planet who are not ensouled.
Right. These would be the organic portals. And some people say the psychopaths, a lot of them are also. Because the psychopath is a psychological term. That's a term that comes from the medical industry in psychology. These psychopaths is how they describe them. Organic portals is a term that came up from this guy, Tom Montauk, and he came up with the term, but they're interchangeable. I'm not sure if he has a description of the differences. I think they overlap, and it's not that important because you don't really want to be with either one, actually.
Oh, no. And then, of course, we know that they're super soldiers, bred for violence and aggressiveness.
And this is all alien. All of this is alien. We are living in a completely alienized paradigm.
Exactly.
Completely. Everything from education to religion to soldiers to war to cloning to psychopaths. This is all alien stuff.
It is. And they're terraforming the planet for their own liking. And we're the next ones to be. I do believe that the chemtrails have the potential to use nanotechnology to completely eliminate organic life on Earth, and that's one of the agendas that's going on here.
Yeah, there's an agenda, but you know what? There is a life force that lives in the planet, and there is something that I call the X factor. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not giving up on that. I'm not giving up on that.
Right. And that's part of what we're talking about today is learning to recognize the inner voice and your gut feeling which is our authentic self. That is what connects us within to our source energy. We are connected to source and the higher dimensions. It has to be that way. There is a thread. All of these dimensions and higher energies are interpenetrating. So it's a matter of tuning into what it is that we feel is the highest within ourselves. And from there, we can begin to discern what these other energies are, because everything is a vibrating energy. All around us, nothing is really solid. It's just vibrating strings. And there are some theories that say that that matter is a form of enslavement, that this was a creation by some of the demigods to ensole or enslave consciousness, and then to milk it.
But matter is an absolutely exquisite form of expression in its pure, untampered with pristine originality. But you can't look at a rose and say, this is not good, right?
Right.
And the human was the same way. Now we are all a symbiotic. We are all in a symbiotic relationship. When I say we, I mean humanity, the human kingdom, with the plant kingdom, with the animal kingdom, with the mineral kingdom. We are all in symbiotic relationship. We have been tampered with to be dumbed down, to have this split in the hemisphere of the brain, the left and right, and to have men focused on that smaller part, and women to be intuitive. They didn't want women. They didn't want to cut down the abilities of the woman for absolutely, completely nefarious reasons. They wanted her to remain cognizant and to be aware while she had to deal with her mate, her male partner, who completely would not see her and recognize her for who she is. This is why they left the woman pretty much intact.
They just destroyed,
and they dumbed down the man quite a bit.
Yeah, and then destroyed the truth about the divine feminine.
Absolutely. They took everything apart. Every story of creation you can imagine, they have twisted. But we are all in symbiotic relationship, and the expression of the physical nature is absolutely a beautiful one when it's untampered with. It doesn't have to remain at this density. It can be when you have. How do I say this? If we were to have our perfect expression of physicality, we would be able, it's very malleable. We would have a choice of how we wanted to look, right? Whether we wanted to have wings or not, we could fly. We can do all kinds of things with physicality. It would be our choice. And it can be an absolutely exquisite expression of physicality. And this is a beautiful thing, but this also was tampered with.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It was brought down into a density and locked in and locked down through various things, DNA and genetics and things like that.
Yes.
And frequency.
How do you see? How do you work with creating? I know you personally work with creating a beauty in your life and manifesting that. You've done that through your home and through everything that you touch. Becomes kind of like a magical fairy tale garden. How do we tap into that source of inspiration within ourselves when there is so much around us that appears to be detrimental to that? Well, how do I? This is tricky because I kind of do it like naturally, organically. I don't work at it. It's just something I have to do. I have to have beauty around me. Everything has to be beautiful. I mean, my dishes, my chairs, my clothes. I have to have fresh flowers everywhere. I have to, because if I didn't, I would go in. I need to see something that reminds me of home. Home. Okay? Yeah. Everything has to be beautiful. My spoons, my silverware, my gardens, everything. And if it's not, then I work at it.
until it is.
Right.
And that usually happens within 2 days because I don't waste time with that. I have to have beauty everywhere.
And it doesn't necessarily cost much.
No.
You create beauty with a shoestring. So the idea that we have to have money before we can do anything, or we have to have X, Y, or Z, to manifest beauty is part of the belief system that keeps us locked in to it being enslaved.
Yeah, my housemate, he's like that. Because he's the owner of this house. I don't own it. He owns it, but he doesn't. He doesn't do anything, and I have carte blanche to do whatever I want. Of course, I beautify it, and he does nothing but enjoy it, right? So, and I'm like, well, what would you like to see? Before I used to ask him, what would you like to see? And, I would like to see a pond. Well, I built a pond, And I would, he would just, have a few simple ideas, and I'm like, well, what do you think is... Well, I tried to get that information. It was very minimal, very nominal, and I said, okay, I'm going to make it beautiful. Do you trust me? I was like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm just going to paint. I'm just going to paint. Right. And that's what I did. So I started. Anyway, October, I decided, because I realized I wasn't moving out after 10 years, and I decided to make this place beautiful because it doesn't look like I'm going anywhere. So I'm going to work on this place. So I looked around, and I said, well, I don't have money. I don't work, right? And so what is the cheapest thing? You paint. But, the things that I do own, they're pretty. I don't buy ugly things, and they're pretty. But it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So I just painted everything white, everything. The walls, the furniture, the candlesticks. And then I put candles everywhere, and fairy lights, and flowers. Now, if you just see that in your mind, just those few things that I mentioned, you can see how there would be beauty.
Yes, absolutely. Are you still there? Did we lose you? Okay, there seems to be a problem with the connection. Maybe we can get the host on BBS to come on and see if there is something we can do. And if not, then this will be an early end to the show, perhaps. Okay. All right. Well, we seem to have been disconnected for some reason, and we can see if the station manager will come on, and if not, then my apologies for an early end to this show. We were having a wonderful conversation with Lady of the Woods, and I hope that you enjoyed her and our discussion tonight. And if anybody wants to have her back, let me know. You can reach me at zanymystic59@yahoo.com. And rather than struggling with trying to make this reconnect, I will just thank you for listening tonight and for us being allowed to share our wonderful conversation together. Enjoy your evening, everyone. Good night.
You are tuned in to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. Join us now on another exciting metaphysical journey. Relax, tune in, drop out, and take a seat by the fire as we explore new realms and possibilities. This is Magenta Pixie. You can find me at magentapixie.weebly.com. But now, here is Zany Mystic and guest. Enjoy the show.
Greetings, and welcome to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. I'm your host, Lance White. My guest tonight is a dear friend who I've spent many hours conversing with. She embodies the divine feminine, the elementals, divas and nature spirits, and sources from higher dimensional ET races. Being a sensitive empath with numerous metaphysical gifts, her journey is one of breaking through the illusory belief systems often called the Matrix. Following divine wisdom within, she creates alchemical shifts by aligning with and creating divine archetypes such as beauty, truth, wisdom, grace, and the goddess energies. It is with great pleasure that I welcome her to the show now. Hello, dear lady. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Well, we're referring to you as the Lady of the Woods, which is your name. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on tonight to share your unique perspective with us.
Okay, you're welcome.
Well, you shared a story with me today that I thought was really valuable. I got quite a bit out of it, and it kind of ties into what...
Abdomen, and I started to feel like my life force was draining. And I'm just abbreviating a lot here. So
right.
This has been going on since January, and it started to get progressively worse. And there was no place I could go. I had to stay here because eventually I'd have to come back anyway. So this was a situation, that was here, and either I learned to live with it in peace or I move. And I didn't want to move because I have a good situation here. So I started to get really, really sick and have panic attacks, and I still get hyperventilation sometimes from this, but I said, something's got to happen. So I went through all the channels that they tell you. You call the noise control guy, you make phone calls, you make requests, and you do this, that, and the next thing. I went to a meeting. They called me to a meeting. We talked about it, and nothing happened. And every time I called the control guy, he said, there's nothing they can do. And I said, no, this is not possible. I was a student pilot myself, and I know that the pilot can choose, how large or small a circle, patterns, whatever. The details really don't matter. But we really got into it, and this has been going on for a couple of months. Now, they still didn't want to do anything, and I didn't want to give up. Mm-hmm. So last week I called. I finally got the number for the control tower itself. And this guy, let's just call him Ron. Okay.
Okay.
And so Ron, at the control tower, blew me off. He just said, there's nothing I can do. You have to take this to the aviation department. And I'm like, well, no, Ron, I know we can do something. And he's like, no, we can't. You call somebody else. So he blew me off. So on, and that he was willing to risk my sanity, literally my sanity, just to appease, his sense of, arrogance or whatever it was, because he totally just didn't want to be bothered. And I'm having this conversation, and I said, because you're not qualified and you're disrespectful, you need to be fired. I said, and furthermore, the airport needs to go, because this area has gone from being a village to a city, and it's very crowded now. And as soon as these planes take off, they're flying over homes, over people's and houses and people's property. It's not sparse. It's really packed. So I said the airport has got to go as well. And I'm having this conversation, and I finished my gardening. And my neighbor calls me on the phone, and she tells me, there's a meeting tonight at the town hall, and it has to do with the airport. And she didn't know what it was about, and she just saw that really quickly. It was 7 o'clock, and I said, oh, my God, I have to go, because maybe they're still trying to make it a small jet airport. Again, because they were trying to bring jets into the airport before, and it didn't work. And I was, oh, my God, they can't do that. I'll go crazy, so I have to show up. So I went to the airport, and I sat down, and everybody was very upset. And within 5 minutes, I discovered that this guy, Ron, was fired, and that they're closing down the control tower. They're closing it down. Now, I sat there not believing my ears. That was not nice. He was also at the meeting, and he was trying to tell me silly things, and he lied about a few things. So I said, this is not good, right? And the noise control guy also was telling me there's nothing that can be done, right? So I was getting nowhere with conventional methods. And I said, okay, I'm going to have to handle this another way. I really have to tap into my divine abilities. I mean, if human beings are what they say we are, we have abilities. And I've done this before. In different ways, but I knew I had to do something now, and it was really difficult because I was feeling so completely sick and so drained, and it was hard to conjure up my energy. But I guess I did it anyway. So after speaking with him last week, and he blew me off, I said, no. I said, something has got to be done. So one of the things that I do when I really need to figure out how to handle something is I work in nature. I work with the soil, and I do gardening and things like that. So, excuse me. So I decided to do some gardening 2 days ago and, spend the whole day doing this. And while I was gardening, I was having this conversation in my head, mostly in a lucid state. It wasn't intentional. It was mostly like lucid. I wasn't doing this on purpose, but it just happened in the background. And I had a conversation with Ron, and I basically told him that he was irresponsible, he was negligent, he blew me off, he was disrespectful, he lied, and he was not qualified to be a manager of a control tower, guiding pilots, if he was not telling them what was going on.
What's been going on with you with various energy attacks and shifts that have been going on in your life. Would you like to start there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's the importance of this story is probably the fact that we, as human beings here in 3D, are still able to manifest and effect changes that are seemingly impossible. Okay? So this story is probably a testament to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Wow, where do I begin? Okay, so I live by an airport, and it's probably maybe 5 blocks away. And I've been living here for 10 years, and there's never been a problem. But this year, all of a sudden, the noise of the planes flying overhead started to increase and be more numerous, and it started to really drive me crazy. It turns out that on many days, the planes would be flying every 1 to 3 minutes overhead at 400-foot altitude, and they sound like little Harley-Davidsons flying overhead. And every 1 to 3 minutes can be maddening from 7:30 in the morning till 7 at night, right? And it turns out that this is the 9th busiest airport in the entire country.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of traffic.
That is a lot.
Yeah, that's why it turned out. So yes, they did open another runway last year, which is why it got busy, but they told me nothing changed. Anyway, I started to get really, really sick, and the noise was excruciating. And at first it just bothered me in my head, but then it started to get to me physically in my abdomen.